나다 공이 공속이 주소가 고치 들이 쳤다서 봐 코로나하고 성주대답이 현대적인 성지체에 강의를 듣는데 게 소주도 나 말이 들이 주소 고치나다 아마 주시는 거네 다만 주소는 고투니 내가 제니 망모요래 대 삼지도 상보래 옛날들이 장부인 난게 장고 제발다 봐봤더니 이 뭐라는니 주소 로마 삼지나 로마야 제는 로야 주소인데나 들이 싸기면 잡았더니 로병 로마 지종 들이 주소가 난게 특히 가래나 들이 거는 됐다 야지 로마 용어리 현대의 작가들 제들이 소소하더니 알아듣지 아마 요리도 있나 아마 같이 볼 수 있지 얘네들이 다 약합들 인체 어디 주소는 거네 아침 머리 은혜지는 약합을 패봐 만나는 망을 패봐 주소 아침 머리 대회랑 동다 말이 들이 뭐란 게 라자 직접 매박을 거는 로마 몰라 강의 잡네 대체발이 무슨 사망에 되니 다 뭐라 투기 제시리 까딘지 양양의 전야 투기 제 니발라든지다 쳤다 소박을 그게 안 되나 그리고서 사마삼 비직발이 강리 주소 들라티니 미망 보거든니 동에 타제 봐 작합을 시들라 소바 삼지메 잡아 죽으면 다시는 연구요래 그 용어는 주소 내 손에 유는 뭐 내가 오요래 내는 되니 로바를 하는 게 로바 니도 내가 오요래 대회는 진짜 로반디 작업대가 전국을 내거나 진짜 이 tet다고 요리 그리고 소시소는 되니 tet다면은 이쪽도야 라서 민망 보더니 죽을로동 라소바 냠니 라로 요리 대회는 이쪽도 말라베 체도 tet다는 것이 주아래 그리 소소라는 나더니 우리들 강의원만 강토체되다 공바당 tamche chema to yo mardi sotori te le gupo yozi dimda tamche teo wate chido teptari yawani sotorang ke semira munijina payoga bog goba yore goba gonde mango yore te sedaru chido ta chimore 강리 고소를 용요래 추고 고추고 요래 문이 냠이 게네 멋지거든요 살롱양도 봐 당선에 미잡차 망보를 피는 요래 대회는 주토도 하장 가르쳐 와서는 통이 이런 게 대답에 랑 강국대 주도 특단은 땅바이 드리스의 땅 잡아진 레버 가래리 마시 손이야 남시대 상마제 버릇이야 요 말이 상계는 소남 고요래 상계가 사와제 고요래 그래도 고요래 대라 소남 고요래 그래서 소남이 집에 강력 뛴 거네 새끼는 피바다 내부 저쪽을 뛰니 용고요래 대라 사자빈다 그 리기는 라비요래 제 잠시 때문에 땅이 야보요래 소남 진지래 제바테 소속 레가지 걔는 하기 소남하고 따고래 오늘 소남지를 같이 봐도 가리스는 고 가리스는 제일 남는 로요리지 그 강리들은 이만한 길이지 고리가 가리스는 몇 돌에 가리스 소남 충청들을 같이나 넘그 마음에 들어오리지 넘듯이 로요리지 다 뒤에 빠르게 가리 다상 쉽도 따스나 따사도 요리지 소남 사크 요리지 다그 체도 사바다 인지 체도 사바 소남 살로거든 용보 최종 많이 봐. 데리 강리 다다 치열한 게 기타 총총들 넘나 sep지 삼지도 인도도 럽쇼스 되는 레빈이 우선 사지에서나 사족세부 제 잡아야되나 레 뭐 총총들 레비치 못 제거래 대회나 들이다가서 남부 추진 이동 하나를 삼고 요래 이동 코너 사람들은 몇십 칼라스나 칼라 지난 게 동다래 말이 나루가 예수 심지가 동다래 별로 자와 삼지지 맞다 그래 대회는지 소름 되고서 사로크 라도 두고 상사잖아 내가 내가 좀 그러래 별로 제랍 가시를 속보차 이제 맞다는 제랍 가시를 속보차 디스 오남때 내 남상 똥도리 미스티카는 몇 개월 망고 통고요라 가실로 속고 빼마시 바지 양타로라 어때 나 지구 체제들이 나디나 저 소사지나 대답을 했지 내가 세로 그랬지 이제 동도 소나 총총서 따지 사초고 저는 사지에 탐지게 소남다 있나봐요 뒤에 너야요 말이지 내가 내가 다톡을 니요 그랬지 강 우리들은 내가 딱 봐도 돌시는 게 내가 라고 더봐 이나 피봐 타톡 사지에 고만 니 더야 그래 내가 기타 강도는 산촉생 제에서 봐지 산촉생 관리는 세계 탐지를 피고 이를 피고 사비로 어떻게 되지 사가리시를 될 수 있는 레벨이 더야 그래 대회들이 추도돼 사람이 보면 계획도 직접 말이 대회 tet다서 그거리다 로마모 강에 약을 어디 동집에 이제는 레벨 삼님 잡아요 그래 내가 돌게 되와 다tuk 사지에 공방 레벨이 더야 그래 대회 토바지 강의서 그래 주토 탐지서 그래 주토 되지 보면 주토 강나요 봐 주로 강이 봐 주토 얘들이 제대로 따로 동바 주질 매질로 계산되나 저 독사제 수능 대답을 더 그거래 대회지 주토다 막 주로 탐지게 하고 요래 얘네들이 사업을 탐지를 대다 가면이 개자기라 내가 동행이 냠용만 보여래 될 축이 피니 냠용도 개발에 들 대회가 그렇게 작하시 해봐이 들이 마음 봐라 주도돼 서로 서이나 nga tsoke tatayana maangpala tamcheke rasike leka cheya pimba dhubya zinjeba ti hako songsona tari tata tewi yengi pera chuto tamcho ramuki leka chenyi shatari pera ramuki leka chenyi tarangi leka no tari cheke yore te konchisu nam ti hako no te cheke yore tari maangpala tari ku so chi sona ya chuto ke lompa teke dakpo jaya ki chingore te dakpo suja lompa tamcheke dakpo jaya gore koso ki chongche gore 저도 맞다 그래. 다시 들으시면
So first of all, thank you to the director of the center and also of the endowment fund. And so the center or the endowment fund is really not for anyone's personal purpose. So first of all, I would like to acknowledge the director of the center, Tricia, who was talking. Since the center started, there have been many people who have done a lot of work and helped the center, and all of them really have done good things. They're all really good. But of all those good people, the best and really most special really is her, is really Tricia. It is really due to her kindness that the center developed in this way, and the disciples were able to develop in the center in this way. So her contribution really was inconceivable. Due to that, people can come here to study at the center. She always cared about those people for this time, and had just done anything that is good for the center, and only caring about the center. So really, she is somebody who nobody like that has ever been here before. So she has been really very kind, and I would like to acknowledge her. And really just like a kind mother. Of course, although I have a kind mother, but one's own mother is just kind to oneself. But then to sustain the center really is for all the people, especially in this country, for this country and for all the people. So to sustain the center really is even kinder, because it benefits so many beings in this country. So what she's done is very precious, and she has never done it for her own purpose, and actually for many years has worked without any salary, any money at all, and really has worked so hard for all this time. So all of us should really remember her kindness and always thank her for her kindness. So I also would like to thank her for her kindness, and we should all acknowledge her kindness. So that is one. And then secondly, regarding the endowment fund, also that those who run the endowment fund all have actually the same intention. It is also for the purpose of this center. And if this center can remain in the future, then many people can find relief from their suffering in the future. It can be a place in this country where people can find peace and happiness. So, therefore, even beyond our lifetime, if you know how to view it with the eyes of Dharma, you see the significance of the center and how important it is that it remains for a very long time in the future. So it is important for the center to remain, and in order for it to remain, also we must accord with the various customs and laws of the country, and therefore an endowment fund seems necessary. Because then later on, after I have died, if there is no endowment in place, it might be difficult to sustain the center. And if the center is not sustained, then also the opportunity to practice and to study the Dharma for many, many people in the future will be lost. So for this purpose, it is very important that we sustain the center through the endowment fund. And also, personally, even though I do not have a lot of things, whatever I have, whatever I receive, I have always offered it all to the endowment fund or to the center, to the monastery. Many times people give me things, and whatever I have, I always try to give it to the endowment fund, even the things that I wear on my body. And especially the endowment fund, although I do have this monastery in Tibet, but it is also very precious to sustain the center in a Western country, because especially here, due to the culture of the people actually engage in practice. So a center is actually very beneficial here. And if only one person truly practices, many more people in the future hundreds of thousands of people in this place can benefit from that. So I consider really this center as very important, and therefore I always try to give anything I have to the center. And because also it is necessary to accumulate merit. Beyond our death we need merit, and even after we have attained enlightenment, we actually still need that merit, because when we attain enlightenment we need to accomplish the enlightened activities, and in order to accomplish them we need merit. And merit is anything that we do that establishes benefit and happiness for sentient beings. Also, in the words of advice by Sakya Pandita, it says, and this is something that is you should actually read. It's a very good book. And so in there, he explains the benefit of merit. And so if we accomplish something with merit, there's a sign that shows that there is merit. So it says in this text that when there is merit, then anything you do becomes successful naturally. Any action that is backed by merit is like the sun shining. It just accomplishes effortlessly. And if merit is inferior, there's small merit, then that merit is like the oil in a butter lamp. It will become exhausted eventually. So it is important to understand the difference between those two types of merit. And the difference comes about in the motivation, how we accumulate this merit. Do we accumulate it for our own purpose or for the purpose of others? So there is a right way to accumulate merit. So accumulating merit has nothing to do with the size of the gift you're making, the material thing, but with the motivation, whether it is done for yourself or for others. And so therefore, if you just create a slight root of virtue, if you do that for the benefit of all sentient beings, for others, then there will always be a twofold result. The Buddha had said, if you seal your roots of virtue with bodhicitta, there will always be a twofold result. And so in that way, even a small act will lead to a great result. And this is how we practice according to Buddhism. Whatever we do it with an intention to benefit others. For example, eating food. It might seem that you're eating the food for your own purpose, clearly, but not necessarily. You can also eat the food for the purpose of others, just like His Holiness the Dalai Lama, for example. And then it becomes the purpose of others, if that is the intention. So that is the correct way to accumulate merit. On the other hand, if you accumulate merit for your own purpose, then of course there will be a result, but the result will be exhausted quickly. For example, we can see there are some people who become very rich. They might be rich for some lifetimes, but once that merit comes to an end, they lose everything. We can see that all of a sudden people have been rich for some years, and then all of a sudden they lose everything. And that is because they have accumulated merit, but only for their own purpose. And that kind of merit will become exhausted. On the other hand, the merit, the virtue, even the slightest virtue that we create for the purpose of others will become the cause of enlightenment, will become equal to all the activities of the Buddhas. It will never be exhausted. It will always bear a temporary and an ultimate result. Temporary, the birth in the higher realms, and ultimately attaining enlightenment. The benefit of self and the happiness of others. And so whatever virtue you practice with a mind of bodhicitta becomes beneficial for the benefit of sentient beings, and will always bear a twofold result. And so that really is the purpose of the centum, to benefit beings. So therefore it is not for any private purpose, any personal purpose. And with that intention, many disciples have worked very hard. And especially now for the endowment fund, the disciples have contributed and worked very hard for the endowment fund, because they understand that point, that there are inconceivable results and benefits from doing that. That is the centum, and not only this centum, is significant, meaningful for many beings. It is any centum or any religious path, any religion actually, that benefits beings. If there is just 4 Sangha members coming together, and for example, those who have taken refuge, and then they come together, then the merit they create in their gathering is great. And everyone who comes here and who creates such a merit in such a place, you will also receive that merit, and those who have contributed will receive that merit. So therefore also there's a great merit for those who are caring for the endowment fund. And so many of you know about that. There might be some new students here, and this is why I am sharing that information, I am introducing to that. And I am especially somebody with some experience of suffering, and also experience of the benefit of the Dharma to eliminate suffering. And so for this reason, I thought of sharing a few words with you about the centum. And so in the future, whoever comes to the centum and benefits from the centum, all who have contributed will have the same merit, whether it is now or in the future. Especially there have been many people who really set aside their own purpose and volunteered and offered their service, and that merit is really incredible. And so even later on, after we have died, the center still must remain. And so since this is a center in this country, it is really the people of this country, the disciples, who need to uphold and care for the center in the future. So this center is created for the benefit of especially the people in this country for a long time. So thank you very much.
대구가 동물가래라 지공지 피해발에 사족세 메나 대등이 송송도 등의 용구 바탕 대용으로 대리 타타바 대 준비를 봐 매바지 준비를 봐 매바지 이 시기나 대니 이 시기 대봐서 대봐서 거네 대니 이 시기 대봐 대다 준비에 대화 그 저제바상 제바 너희 저제바상 제바데 수시 특제 수적시 특제 말이 강의들 사제가 공방 토바지가 다 시서고요래 대회는 오 사제 된 지네 사제를 탐지 진비지 시제 그런데 난다버레 내가 나 매직을 좋아지야 또 산지 가고 잔도 요래스 가네 산지 시바데 탐지 진발이 있어 아주 좋소 옛날 거기 인지식을 말 인지식을 왜 했어요 막 인지하고 오면 감성 심기 장미바 그 동이 저상 끼바 대와 저상 끼바 대로 산지 가고도 지랑을 대와 그 대와 저세 산지కి 그래서 때문에 산지 인지식이면 하마고 되대와 어제들이 삼상이 요래 옛날에 문에 전에 감성 심기도 장미바 또송똥 짓인 됐다버리 감성들 감성미 그래서 네도 감성미 감성 그래 뒤에서는 바탕에 내가 줘봐 즉 능에만 줘봐 그래 오늘 뭐도 저다 대상 저기 능에 빠마타 수시요 말이 하고 말이지 얘는 사지 그 탐지 그 감성 심지 동에 또 다니는 봐. 다하고 우리 또 돌기를 드니 상쪽 생긴 봐. 인핑을 놓으신 봐. 대치나 오 감성 심지 대화도 봐. 대외 저세고 소라를 대 탑송. 동에서를 잡아 탑대 손따디를 탐지 긴 봐. 이 민도지. 대외는 들이 따뜻하고서 동에 내 절대 신은 동이 저상 제가 때문에 절대 제가 신은 다 때를 타고 탑지 갈래 다 당접선 꾸인조 다 뇨라 대로 망보 들이 내와도 동행지 마 거기 동행이 나니 용기 있게 요리지 오 삼세대 자치 버리지 거기는 삼세대 요리지 산쪽선 동대 장면이 직장 매스 같이 해서 오, 라기 니도 니들 삼대로 산쪽선 말했어. 조물 삼대 말했어. 생기 탐제로 때 산쪽선을 했어. 송수대로래. 대리그네 이게 생기 탐제 깨야 돼. 다음 삼대 코랑 문지고 그래. 삼대 가려도 그래. 도다 도지 발란도 그래. 대 가와서 그래. 산쪽선 중족되는 송동가 용dem이 하래. 산쪽선 종지 미리 설정 매시 남그 자지로 삼아 싸놓을 차대요라 코를 남을 버티라 삼세 요리지 삼세 된 거지나 삼세 종지 미리 직접 매지 오늘 샘지 탐제를 요리다 사지마도 계속 그거 말이 그때 제트가 탑 나오 삼세 문지 이 말에 맞지와 제로 탑 소탈 지와 뭐냐부터 산쪽선부터 봐 공리 공무 때문에 배를 타러 들이 상하대. 들이 나눠서 봐서 들이 총알을 했지. 들이 또 something 문제도 같이 말했지. 랑 도설세요. 세아된 문제는 들이 했지. 대체를 동안 망을 동안 들이 그 생부등이 하고 그랬지.
So we have talked about conventional narrative bodhicitta, and so in the morning you have talked about what is this conventional bodhicitta and why is it necessary, and also we have said that if you do not have bodhicitta, then you experience the suffering of the three lower realms, and if you have bodhicitta, then you can become liberated. And we have said that on the conventional level, karma, cause and effect is infallible. And of the three types of faith, the most important one is the trusting faith, and that means to trust in karma. So it is to understand the causes of happiness and the causes of suffering, and then the results that these causes bear. And so who can understand, who can really know all of that? No person actually can know all that. Only someone, a Buddha who has attained complete enlightenment, can know all that. And so the Buddha himself, we call the Buddha endowed with the omniscient wisdom. So one time actually somebody asked me, trying to refute that view. And so this person then said, so you're saying that the Buddha has this omniscient, this all-knowing wisdom, but so if he has this all-knowing wisdom, then does he know English? And so then I replied to that person, I don't know if the Buddha knows English, but the Buddha can clearly show you the cause of suffering of all sentient beings in the three realms, and can show you the cause of happiness. The Buddha knows those causes, and if you wish to be happy, the Buddha can show you these causes. But I don't know if he would know English. We have said that there are sentient beings in the three realms within this billionfold universe. So these three realms are the form realm, the formless realm, and the desire realm. And anywhere in those realms in samsara, what sentient beings want is the same. They all want to be happy, and nobody wants to suffer. Just who knows how to avoid suffering? Nobody knows that. And only the Buddha had seen that the root cause of all suffering of all sentient beings in the three realms is self-grasping. And he also knew that the only way to destroy it is to cultivate bodhicitta, an altruistic mind. So the Buddha had shown the cause of happiness of all sentient beings in the three realms. And so isn't that what one would call an omniscient mind? If we understand the causes of happiness and the causes of suffering. And so then to become liberated from all that is, the way to become liberated is to cultivate bodhicitta. And so we have also mentioned that on the relative or conventional level, there is only trouble. We experience sometimes happiness, mostly suffering. Samsara has the nature of suffering. But actually there is one good quality in samsara, and that is that even in samsara there exists kindness and compassion. There exists love, and that is very a precious thing within samsara. Because there is not a single being who does not have at least some bodhicitta. All beings have at least some bodhicitta. Now, some people say that the love that you have for your family and your friends, that is not real bodhicitta. Real bodhicitta is only that love you have for all sentient beings. And it is true to say that bodhicitta is to have love for all sentient beings, but then we need to start from where we are by recognizing what is the nature of it. What is love and compassion actually? What is kindness? And so the only way for us to recognize that to begin with is the love that we have for our friends, for example. This is how we can identify what kind of feeling it actually is. So although I do not have much learning, I have heard from the Bodhicharya Vajradhara. In that text also it says there is not a single being who does not have at least some bodhicitta. Even animals like birds or like ravens, for example, who eat other animals, even they have some love and compassion, at least to some degree. So, of course, the compassion for all sentient beings, that is something that only enlightened Buddha actually has accomplished. But from our perspective, we need to develop this love by first recognizing it. And so for this reason, we can identify this love as bodhicitta. In the beginning, we need to recognize love in order to give rise to love where it has not arisen. And that is the pratimoksha path, the individual liberation path. And then the bodhisattva vow or path is to not let bodhicitta decline where it has arisen. And then the Vajrayana path is to further increase bodhicitta. So this is actually where the 3 levels of the path have arisen from. So in the beginning, in order to increase love for all beings, it is first of all necessary to identify love and kindness, compassion. And we identify that when we think about a friend or someone that we love. And then once we have recognized love, then we need to develop it and increase it further and further. But in the beginning, we first need to understand the feeling of love arising within our own mind.
대회나 산쪽 샘제다 문진이 다 삼제레스 소소 강도 삼제 대문진이 다티 키르동 다 만도 다 강리지나 다티 무슨 샘 깨고래 깨나 다무 동부 내로 사지기 없고 나와래 권도 따뜻해나 코가 토마미 바를 장미 발랑 거래지 감성 코바들 꼬라잡는데 감성을 꼬라잡는 루 장미 발랑 거래지 대를 넣었더니 파마 맞이 받쳐요 말이지 대회에서 소소한 게 파마라 삼티 깨고래 삼티 깨 대답을 깨나 다 참아 파마 맞이면 마독도 더보지 고아 차용 거요래 다들 고아리 어떤 문제이 있어 대리 이치적게 됐잖아 대 따와스 갑자기 생기 파마 맞이와 찍자 요 말 저는 무슨 소차 가린 통나 죽기기 매 죽미지 라디 강 차나요 파마 맞이와 요 말에 대 맞이 담을 다치 통로야 담을 다치 가리지 제 세상께 그 가르치네. 라그지양 마마랑가 하장 트인치에 파마 제동치에 고모들라서 봐라. 제 체메 받게 파 누가 땅 땅나 땅 호하게 산속성 잡고다 시고 말이. 제랑 그 철새 하면 이 파스 하면 다 저저지요 강고 고조는 열니 다다다 누 봤던 거 요리. 걔는 누 봤던 이 삼지야. 그런 가지고는 나를 다지 쪽으로 오고 봐지 다지 또 세상계 요래 다르더니 세상계 가리라 세상계 삼지라로 호요래 제외는 저기 세상 따위 득밤에서 된거 보셔라 다들이 남을 다지를 뒤다보라가 파마 맞이와 직접 매바 뒤들이 하정 된치와 다 니오 뭐지 되게 지양 하마 뒤파마 무슨 차대요래 대회 싸움들이 대를 삼제의 기와래 삼제 기와 지금 설 팽이도 오거든 삼제 기와도 랑라 팽이도 코돌라 팽이요래 랑이 동지 냠들 코돌라 팽이래 코도 나디는 지는 유모밖에 딜레왕게 단도와를 좀 참대요래 대랑 삼제 그 팽이로 삼제에서 그 나디 식도요래 삼티 쳤담잖아. 소소라 되게 비행으로 소치 삼티 끼마다도 대니 맞췄나? 자동 좋아하게 되지. 라니가 비행도 사. 대고서 세상은 말아 저 무슨 호암 번호면 비행거리지. 강리 삼티 그 뭐하면 샘 동나오는 냠 샘냠도 요리. 샘 남과도 맞잡잡면은 대라더니 그밖에 나이 인디는 되니. 말고 왕게 다니 있은 거 요러면 쟁이 대롱 변 잡소직을 바람이오나 바람 소소소소 바람 인진 거 요러지 얘는 이제 잡소 찍고 차대 대다고 동상을 찍고 차대요 변나 삼대지나 고소를 팽이 요리 코로지나 다다랑 놓고 요러 변 도편이나 다다 삼대요는 냠지는 집어 요리 코로랑 지는 농가라 따도 뭐 랍사 쳐봐 맞지 봐 차한 거 요러 들으면 세고 이제 되게 맞지 하고네 다 삼세진을 랑라 팽이도 니는 팽이도 삼네 다디왜 다디 따와서 파마 맞지 봐 직접 매 곰바지 다디 탐정 나 삼세 공고 줘봐는 다 변을 줘랑 그 갑이 벌써 속차 차고서 가신 통을 될 피부탑 상호당 이렇게 만나려지로 야또 빈티니나 참아는 게 고마시는 남은 나기 남이 뜻바는 게 좋아 레상 양도는 와 야나 되게 이마한테 자기 요리 빼는 거 소요 용기 가요 매네요 따와지 공소나 또 마시나 들은 건 강박하고는 참아는 건 남은 나기 좋아 계요리 가감매가 삼티 참을 계요리 제가 하좀 팽에도 뒤다 보니 무슨 고음네 좁아지지 그럼 탐지감이 다른 기분이 남들 되는 지금 뭐를 차오나 우람상 뒤에서 주파감 타고 요리 오 소소 쪽으로 그 삼티다 보자고 그래서 그랬더니 삼히기 뭐랬지라 또 탐지를 피부 탑코나 삼고 될더니 삼지를 뛰는지 시랍 연구요리 좁아가 감했더니 삼지도 양장도 뛰고 요래지
So when we first identify, recognize bodhicitta, we must first recognize this feeling of kindness and compassion, of love in our own mind. And then once we have identified it, we need to increase it. So then what is the method to increase it? And so first it must arise within the mind. And so then, according to the actual instructions of the Buddha, on a conventional level, we have taken birth, taken on different bodies since beginningless time infinitely. So since beginningless times, we have been wandering around the three realms of samsara and have taken on countless bodies. And in each of these incarnations, we have had parents. So therefore, all sentient beings have been our parents in a past life. So first of all, we must develop love for our own parents, and then recognize that there's not a single being who has not been my parent too in a past life. So first, you need to understand that. And then understanding that, you gain certainty that this is really how it is, so you develop trust. So first, there is the correct view to hold. The correct view, the view is to recognize that all sentient beings of the three realms have been your parents. And when you hold that view, then whatever sentient being you see, you encounter, for example, a little insect or a person or a being without a body, like a spirit or a god and so on, whoever you encounter, you will recognize that they all have been my parents in a past life. And then even when you encounter some enemy, somebody that you dislike or dislikes you, then when you encounter somebody you dislike, then anger or aversion arises. But then what actually is that anger? Why is there an enemy? Especially that enemy actually in a previous life has been somebody who was extremely close to you, very kind, like you're a very kind parent or a very loving friend. And then you have not behaved yourself well towards that person, and then this samsaric bodhicitta has not been cherished, and therefore it has all this love has transformed into anger. For example, in a samsaric sense, then you might have said, if you don't love me in return, then also I won't love you, or so. And so then that other person's love all turns into anger. And now they appear and they cause harm. And for this reason, especially in the Jikonkagi lineage, we always place the enemy who hates us first and foremost, most important. So it is especially somebody that causes us to get angry, because when we get angry, then what is at stake? What we lose when we get angry is our love, our compassion. And therefore it is said, there is no greater evil than hatred. And so therefore, understanding that, you will see that even those enemies who you don't like also have been your parents. And of all the other parents, they are even kinder to you. They are in an even closer relationship, in an even closer lifetime in the past. So you should regard them with love, just like you regard with love the parents of this lifetime. And so when you cultivate kindness and compassion, love, then who really benefits from that? Others benefit, and also you yourself will benefit. It will actually accomplish the purpose of others and self simultaneously. So how you benefit others is that others, sentient beings, wander in the 6 realms of samsara as a result of their karmas that come from afflictions and ultimately self-grasping. So what they need is love that will benefit them, that will destroy their self-grasping too. So the greater your love for them, the more you can benefit them by destroying their self-grasping with love. And then also you benefit from cultivating love and compassion, because the moment you give rise to it, your mind becomes like a sun that melts ice. So it benefits self and others at the same time. And also, for example, when somebody has passed away, we can benefit them with dedication prayers. And how that benefit actually comes about is that this dedication prayer actually is a prayer of love and compassion, and this is why we can benefit them. And we can benefit them because ultimately our minds are actually always together, because mind pervades wherever space pervades, is all pervasive. It is only from our deluded perspective, from our ignorant perspective, that we perceive this duality of self and others. But in reality, that does not exist. For example, it is just like 2 waves appearing on the ocean. We hold them to be 2, but actually they arise from the single basis of the ocean. So ultimately, they have a single basis. And on that basis, we can benefit others if we cultivate love and compassion. And likewise, harm others if we give rise to anger. When, for example, somebody is very angry all the time with their friends and so on, then just naturally, even though they don't say anything, just looking at their face, you can't look at their face because they look so angry. Nobody wants to look at them. And everybody will feel unhappy next to them just naturally. And that really shows that the basis of our mind is a single one. And understanding that, we can also see how we can benefit others if we give rise to love and compassion. So again, the view is to recognize that all sentient beings have been once parents. Second, the meditation is to cultivate love and compassion. And third, the conduct is to have a wish to benefit all beings. Whenever you encounter a being, you will have a wish to benefit them. For example, you see a little insect, a little animal, you would recite some mani mantras also, and so on. And also, in your conduct, there will be no difference between people. It doesn't really matter whether you know them or not. You will feel that they actually all are just like a family. You will feel a family-like feeling towards everyone. So this is how it becomes if you habituate to this view. And so I personally, although I do not have much learning, I have habituated to that view. And for this reason, just naturally, I feel close to anybody, whether I know them personally or not. I feel they're like my family, just the same. And for this reason, I share the same love and compassion for all beings that I meet. And so that is the benefit of cultivating, of habituating to this view. And that is reflected in all your conduct. So, especially towards those enemies you hate and so forth, you should cultivate loving kindness and compassion. And if you develop this view, then whatever happens, you will always be able to be patient in any kind of circumstance. So it is important to cherish, to uphold this love and compassion. And if you do so, then it will benefit others and oneself. And as a result of having cultivated love and compassion, wisdom will arise. So for this reason, it is important in all your activities to always bring this back to mind again and again.
대회들이 삼재의 유라오는 삼재의 용신에 다보 시랍 요구요래. 인제 미래 시랍 사는 요구요 말에. 인제들 좋다버는들이 시랍대 배는 샘들 처럼 답. 인제들 좋다버. 이 조개 처럼 돼 쇼나 트리쳐서 배부 도야요. 배시다버는. 배는 다자나. 야 삼재요나 pero tren maso todo que da llevar 나를 로마 소소로 강에 가래요. 주소를 찾기 강에 가래요. 대삼지 냠들 남자 차상 주소 생적인 사마 학고대요. 대삼모다나 삼재지 로마 삼재요. 데르티니 소주 강에 니가더니 강에가 가리 다 깨고 대삼모 랍수고요래. 야 삼재면은 맞지? 소소적인 도로서는 강에 들이치기 엄마가 남지 시랍 내가 차로 요래 시랍을 뜨니들 남지 동이 무슨 달라야 내가 다다 내가 필바를 삼세 서로 같으면 시랍용 요래 빼는 며칠이나 자캅도 사는데 뭐는 산이고 자소를 삼선 남고 요래 멀리 찾기는 뛰네 빼지다가 삼바 자치와 사족 셈데 빼는 셈데 시랍 제 자치 못 차고 삼노다나 나는 조보니 피지 도어들 펜베다 콜라서 하잖아. 들이체도 파로 도어지 강에 내당 동아 참아 초르고 오지 등에 다 깨고 너희들이 hinge지. 사바라 팀이 hinge지. 대회진이 다다보 사바고 뭐 갑자기 만남 과다는 무슨 기탐지 다 파마마데 말매래. 대롤로 대는 파마가 가른 되지 마. 야, 무슨 물리를 못 쳤는데다 파마 가시가 파마를 낙샘이 요래 낙샘이 강리 소소 그랬더니 파마 알 많이 졸라미하고 맞이했더니 밤에 당하면 랑 고마 잠마서 빨리 밤에다 보자 그러라 하나 파시 이일 이다 누모랑이 때렸더니 다 물리를 못 쳤대요. 저기 소소래 요는 끼지더니 파마를 했더니 다 저요래 내가 물리를 못 수리해서 아미트에서 야 pero 들어오지와는 가리도 농에 가리도 들리서 못한 상태에서 아 우리 아마도 치보리에서는 로지 다 뒤집지 그래 들이니 세도 들고 들이 셈 초아들 내가더니 다 지니 hingi 요다 가리네 오랑 그 강의 삼재 요번 뭐지 강에서 초록 요래 pero 제 나디오나 그래서 셈오 다세 나디 소치셈은 맞지 봐요 요래 저는 삼바등 이제 유랑 돈이 좋아서 라비 연구 요래 캐도 검니 요래 돈이 좋아서 강에 라고 또 노해요 세비 또 랩디오라 설레면 파세와 요바고 세와 추고 도지 농에 대한 고 나디는 잼베 레기 와사라 대시에 도지 셈나 내가 연구 요래 오 나디는 농에 값서 도지 와지 레오나 강에 가서 서빠지 보이는 걸 봐. 가빠도 다운하지. 강그 용지 삼재가 용지 되셔 하세. 도지 그때 아 미송라. 제 소화요 말 딱 kontrol하고 그러. 야 매일 용지리면도 삼재가 용지도. 피지 삼재요라. 지 소화도 요리 삼재 미선이 다 매일 적대 오픈 봐만도. 제 삼재 다 치고이나. 다 삼재지 초와는 깨고 다 등에 끼는 상호도 랑가 파마 든지 기기 다 파마가 물리는 그 용띠고 용띠면아 다 맞게도 되와 정토고 얼마나 협달에 통고 협달 통지를 가라고 와 이 소리 오 기기 담지 다 쳐버렸어 기기 담지 꼴로 상호상 아 용띠 나도 내가 대체 다 사고대 수지 얘니 기기 트레이서 야 기기는 삼지 제거래 삼지 제고 그럼 다 삼지 좀 무지고 오 콜로티 들어가 삼지 톱통 우리 삼지 들이조고노 저 사람 요야요 말아 삼지 심 랑마 그 랑트나기 끼고 상당 가든지 봐서 변나 저기 땀 가리시네 땀 입이 땀야 니바 가리때서 야 들이서 못하는 들랑 초바서 지고 뒤 삼지 들이서 왔잖아 들이 삼지 유를 망아 차오는 들이 도대 말이 도지만 들이 기타시도 봐 변나 도도 도지 버는 통보나 들이 미지만 기타시도 봐 삼지고 차고라 삼지가 용디나 뒤도 또 삼지 용디시 들이 양장도 곰 대전들이 남공이 세나 숨기 탐지라 숨기 탐지를 피고 선 로세나 핀셈 제ek 숨기 탐지를 피기요디 핀셈디 삼지 오지 랑기동에 시키요라 아니 이걸 피기도 없어 들이 딱 지셔도 동삼하고 땅나 들이 삼지가 유디 대신 이제도 해려고나 이기도 철링기도 디 삼지가 코로 파피기 요리지 무슨 피기 요리지 대다와 삼노상 당원의 돈이 들이 곰네 이 삼노상은 들이 가리에 들이 생사지 랩고를 초반으로 말을 심지 섬지 되어다 네 상을 동반하고 자로 요래
And so if you possess loving kindness and compassion, if that has arisen within the mind, then from that quality of love and compassion, wisdom will arise. So therefore, if there is no compassion, then also no wisdom really can arise. Compassion is like heat or warmth. And the mind, for the time being, is frozen like ice. So one's wisdom is like being frozen and need to be melted. So with the warmth of compassion, it is melted and becomes water, and then you can do many things with water. And so when this is just what we have also heard before, people talk about, for example, the issues that we have at the center and the hardships and the difficulties that we have, and also students talk about their difficulties. We talk to each other because we open up in this way because there is love and compassion. And then those who receive the difficulties of others, they can have an understanding for that, because the disciples share love and compassion for each other. And then once they have voiced their difficulties, then others can help them determine or decide how we can resolve the issue. And then in that way, in that kind of environment, people can easily open up and just talk about anything. But then if one lacks this love and compassion, then one also will close up, and one will not voice whatever difficulties there are, and then also nothing can develop, no wisdom can develop from that. So we can see the benefits temporarily in this life already, and when we look at what happens when we give rise to love and compassion, and how it develops wisdom. Or, for example, another temporary example in this world, if somebody is really concerned about their country, it is possible that they even become like the president or so of some country. So it is because their mind is very vast. When we cultivate bodhicitta, it broadens the mind, and a broad, vast mind is a mind of wisdom, so then wisdom increases. And if you have such a broad mind of love and compassion, then, for example, between friends, you would only think, what can I do to benefit my friend? You would only think about the well-being of that companion. And because you only think about his well-being, you will actually become aware of his needs, his situation, his problems, his difficulties. You actually will begin to feel all that this person actually needs. And then, knowing that through a personal feeling, you will know what to do in order to help that person. and you will want to help that person with compassion. So first we develop love, and we recognize that all sentient beings have been our parents in a previous life. So that we bring to mind. Then we remember the kindness of these parents. For example, our parents have given us a precious human body. And there are some people who resent their parents for various reasons, and also maybe parents were quite strict with their children, maybe because they didn't really listen also. But in any case, before you could even walk, at least the parents have cared for you. And of all those other rebirths, the Bardo consciousness and the hungry spirits and the other spirits, you have been the one who was given this precious human body through your parents. So you had the cause already, but the parents really gave you the condition. Your mother gave you the condition to be a precious human being. Because it could be otherwise too. How would it be if I was born as an animal? What kind of suffering would that be? So when you think about that, you will really see my mother is really so kind, so precious. And so a real feeling will actually arise in your mind. And so then a sign that somebody has really cultivated compassion is that a compassionate person will naturally feel the suffering, the difficulties, the needs of others. It just naturally comes to them. For example, if another person is sick, then this compassionate person will feel that sickness too, and it will also make them feel unwell. And so this is actually how the practice of Donglen, of giving one's happiness and taking in suffering, actually happens naturally. It happens naturally only if you are compassionate towards others. Then there's actually no need to deliberately meditate on it. It just happens if you are compassionate. For example, if you are compassionate and your friend suffers, then it comes to your mind. That friend's suffering, you care about that. It comes to your mind. You take it on. You feel that person suffering because you care. And then also you understand that a person suffers ultimately due to self-grasping and because they have engaged in negative actions or negative karma. But then if you think about this person with love, you will alleviate some of their suffering. If you think about your own suffering, and then you think about a person that loves you very much, if that person comes close to you or even just calls you on the phone, immediately you will feel happy. You will not even think about your sickness. It will get lesser, just because you feel the love of that person for you. So that is the good quality of love and compassion. And so on the other hand, if a person lacks love and compassion, then also he will not make the others around him feel happy. Now, if a person is angry, it will also make others feel angry or unhappy. And so that is when somebody feels happy next to you because you love them, or you love somebody that is there because they love you, it is not a quality of the person, like the person's body, so to say, but the quality is a quality of love and compassion. So the person's body is not really what benefits you. It's not the physical presence of the person that benefits you, but it's the love that the person has that benefits you. That it is the love that makes you feel well, that a feeling that arises. And so think about this feeling of love that arises in your mind. Think about the suffering of others. For example, your parents. Your parents have given you the precious human body. And then also your teachers, because even though you have this human body, you also need to learn things. Without your teachers, you don't know anything about this world. And so people go to school and then they find work and then they say, this is what I do, this is what I have learned. But really, where did you gain this knowledge? It really comes from your teachers, so they are extremely kind. So remembering that, you also cultivate love and compassion for your teachers. And so you recognize love also there when it arises. And so that is something, love is something you can see that need to be developed and cultivated. Love is nothing that can be bought for money or so. It is just like a honey bee collecting honey consistently. In the same way, we need to collect or increase our love all the time. And so how we increase our love is by thinking about the good qualities of others. For example, you think about a loving friend and you remember the loving words that he spoke to you, or the gift that he gave to you, and so on. And so when you think about that, a feeling of love for them arises. And so in that way, love and compassion increases. And so then you extend that also to other friends, other companions. And then you will open up and want to talk to even more people. And that conversation then, that association with others, with love and compassion, will create happiness for all. So first it is necessary to recognize compassion, love, and then it is necessary to again and again develop it, contemplate it. At all times, for example, even if when you're waking up in the middle of the night, think of all sentient beings. Think, may I benefit all beings. And any time you cultivate such a beneficial mind for sentient beings, you somewhat diminish their suffering. So you benefit and also sentient beings benefit therefrom. So when you think about it really closely, really carefully, you can see the great quality of love and compassion and the feeling that it brings to others. So this is really how the practice of Donglen comes about. You think about the suffering of others, and by doing that with compassion, you naturally will feel their suffering, that is taking in their suffering. And because you love them, you will naturally want to help them. You will send out love and compassion, help to them, just naturally. So you will think about ways on how to alleviate their difficulties. So it is important to have this actual feeling arise in your mind, because if you don't actually develop this feeling of taking on, really thinking about the suffering of others, if this feeling is lacking, then even if you recite those prayers, may all beings have happiness and the causes of happiness, then these will just be empty words.
Thank you, Abharsaka. She. Om Mani Padme Hum. 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 우리 삼대제사 이열짜리 나보 파마 너는 이봐 거기 여기는 다 체력 과탐지 다다다 우리 지나 답이처럼 적지 말로 니가 내 시도 같은 체보리 락빠졌더니 맞천더라 적지 체력 과 탐지 같은 체보리 변을 상로 당나 다다 매 가시나 소소 가시 불에 요리 가시 아메리카라 요리 드니 시고 왕게 드 파마 파서 핀도 트레마서 로망 못해 잡고 요 말이 변을 카바리 죽고 당나 다다더니 먹은 통도 꽤 치트로 그래 변나 대다면은 고소 같이 먹지 딴 거리 띵고서 가봐 돈을 던지 로카시에 맞으면 드니 고소 너무 멋진 통로제다가 저와 내가 제요래 제 삼치 강리 시랍라 띵에 체력바 삼치가 됐다가 드니 로나 남들 레레 내라서 왔다미 제일 좋아해 드니 자꾸 놓고는데 멋지더니 그 도야요 말이 약합시 봐서 그 놓고래 약합 가는 기부 약합 내라고 지금 미나 드니 망을 찹시 밤도 참록 나서 봐 약합 야가 내가 쳐보요래 약합 가시는 동에 요나야 약합시 봐도 요나지 또 망문이 제대 잡 약합 연구원이 대탐들을 써놓았다가 무슨 생 초발을 그래 진짜 강하지는 제 몸쪽이 은혜를 가는 쳐보서는 약합 가는 침보 대대는 약합을 집에요 봐 약합을 삼세요 봐 약합 뒤 망했더니 삼세 잡은 거요래 대답도 신업변에 약하고 짜살라서 보태고는 삼세 문이 집이 초대져 봤자 그래서 각시 약합 뒤지게 오면은 찾아도 요만에 이거는 고소 마시와래 지왕 말하게 좀 막이래가 맞이네 다다 강에 막 못해게 요래 소화가 강에 따따따 변은 약합 용도 망망되라 피다도 요나 짜찰거는 고모찍 피우는 방지하나 약합 용도 같은 망라 변은 톱도 요래 대다서 상호당나 약종은 첫박바 찍 특나 이 약주 가차를 잡고 빼세다가 그 약합을 삼세요 봐 그 뒤처럼 쓰는 봐 그래서 랑은에 했더니 내가 탐지 되는 연구 요래 대다고 상호서 약합을 삼세 공지돼 같이 뭘 뜨고 소가서 약합들 빼삼세 제도 약합 마다 매망 대삼지 그 매망을 도다를 고소 최소 탐지 리땅게 요리 그 약합 매망체 리쌍 어떤 대삼제 삼제 곰 그 다다 무슨 매발한 거 파마기고 샤송 대삼제나 무슨 미장 고소 사지 맡고 받았더니 고소 나디 요니 노아르도 가는 참도 요리 감성 관계나 그래서 삼제지는 삼제지 그 핀을 내는 놈이 봐세네 그 ramno sanji kompa mena tabu chinga temune mulitang toba teri chakri yore tewe tata dewa tamchi teni sanchok selmin yongore jisi dewa sanji ga jebari teni sanji ga kare chikari teni sanji ga sanchok selmin ngotre che yore samte teni ngotre che samte teni soka gomna teni raji samche dewa je samte teni yonga teni ngusu sen ta ngune sanji ga jebari sanji kogu tabde jebari 라고 봐대 sanji kogu 잡을 낳고 요마가 내내 주로 탑을 남띵이 탑을 랑이라리 지발지디 저 사실 저 삼기 곰 공소마지 조바곰 매상보지 제대로지 보용 거래 최소마야 내가 도고 제가 제압한게 네비 조정 없게 집에는 그랬지 토마토 장도 잡수로는 가리지 잡수로는 샘기고리 샘기 가리리 어찌 제하고 거리 다 남대라 서그 제하고는 뭐지 견두지 미상보 얘는 이렇게 방도가 얘는 너 방도요 봐 핀도요 봐 펜센요 봐 서로 로제도 로요 봐 로제를 같이 저기 말록들을 저밤별라서 보나 다 소다이 민강라서 원다다 제기 요리 대상이 우리지 아마 소사일 것도 동조 대래 용과래 사정스는 용과래 가시를 미장 답을 추기 손을 써보다는 매는 소다 밀가라 짜장 사걸 서로 강연이 오마이 생구생기는 피고 상데 sempre 남그 갖다 잡고 요래 들더니 답이 줄였더니 이런 거 속에 섬지 섬지를 로체기 요래 대답하더니 라지 탐지게 라는 거 찾긴 했더니 그 사족선을 로종도 사족선을 꼴 샌드서 레좀들 꼴을 싸먹고 세당 샘도 싸고 차로 요래 세디 제도 싸먹고 가세도 저 남로 그러더니 선생님 잘못하고 차요 그래 대회 상지가 세대는 마차 송구요라 이제 동체 보여랬어.
So, our first object of cultivating loving kindness and compassion are our parents, and then also we have said secondly our teachers. For example, scientific teachers. Actually, all the teachers, whether our spiritual teachers or worldly teachers, are extremely kind. Especially, actually, also the worldly teachers. Scientific teachers are very kind. When you think about it, for example, there are some people live in Tibet, and some people live in America, and nowadays, due to politics, sometimes people cannot meet their parents for many years. But because science has developed, there are phones, and even nowadays we can see each other on a screen when we call each other directly. We can see each other's face and talk to each other, even though we are in different countries and can actually not ever meet. And then people, it moves them so much, they even start crying. Also very often, it happens to myself when I talk to people and see them on the screen. It moves them very much. You can see it, how their face changes, and it really makes them feel happy. So that is a creation of science, the wisdom of science. Scientists have invented the airplanes and the trains and so forth. And actually, these are all things that one person alone cannot create. It is really created by the common effort of the country. So the country actually is very kind too, because without the country, we wouldn't have all of this happiness that we have now, even in a worldly sense. The public, the people, they wouldn't have the various laws and security and technology and so forth. So especially this is a very good country, and even though some countries do not have it so good, but still they give as much as they can to their people and are also necessary. And that is because for as long as we have the country, we have at least some mundane happiness in this life. So when you think about it, a feeling arises in the mind, and you can think about it in terms of anything that makes you give rise to love. And you think about all the good qualities of that in order to increase your love. So you think about your country and the people in this country with love, and that love will then pervade all the people. For example, also some people don't like to pay taxes. Actually, those people who don't like to pay taxes just really don't understand, because that is really such an excellent way of contributing to the country. It is very important to pay one's taxes for this reason. There are some people in this world who always encounter many difficulties in making a living, financial difficulties, and that is because they have not practiced generosity in past lives. And if you actually really have a wish to benefit your entire country, then the best way to do that really is to pay taxes, because if you just pay $1, for example, you chip in $1 in taxes, then that dollar will pervade all the people in this country. It's a contribution to the country as a whole. For example, it is just like pouring one drop of water into the ocean. That drop of water will pervade the entire ocean. So likewise, you can when you cultivate love for your country, then just naturally you will want to contribute to the country. You will want to observe the laws of the country and so on. You will want it to be well. And this is also how I see it myself. Wherever I go, I feel great love for all the various countries, and especially also the countries' security system, like the army, the soldiers, and so on, who really give up their own life, life force, for the purpose of this country, for the general public, all the people in this country, because they feel love and they care about the country. And so I appreciate them very much. And then also sometimes the people are not present any longer. For example, one's parents have passed away. But even though they are not physically present, they still have self-grasping, and therefore until attaining enlightenment, they will wander anywhere in the 3 or 6 realms of samsara. And whenever they give rise to love and compassion, that ripening of karma will come to an end. And then, ideally, in the best case, they attain enlightenment, or they go to a pure land, or they at least take birth as a precious human being. But in any case, all happiness arises from bodhicitta. And this is what the Buddha had taught. So this is how the Buddha will protect us, will liberate us. So how does the Buddha actually do that? He's doing that by introducing us to the causes of happiness, through bodhicitta, loving kindness and compassion. And he's saying that whoever cultivates it will create a cause of happiness for self and others. And in that sense, the Buddha really gave us happiness because the Buddha gave us the method to create happiness. The Buddha never actually said, I will protect you from all suffering, but the Buddha actually said, I can show you the path to liberation, but liberation depends on yourself. So therefore the Buddha said, you should cultivate love and compassion, you should not get angry, you should be patient, you should be kind to others. And if you do that, then even in this lifetime you will be happy. And it will also be the cause of happiness in all future lifetimes. So this is what we learn, for instance, when we take refuge. When we take refuge, we first must cultivate the right motivation of love. And whoever cultivates love is a sangha. And a sangha is essentially someone who entirely abandons harming others and who completely wants to benefit others, has a wish to help and benefit anyone. So that is a sangha. And also in a worldly sense, those great beings actually exist. There are some people, for example, who are wealthy, and then they, for example, build schools or hospitals and so on. And because in a previous life they have already accumulated merit, they now have a wish to be generous in this life. And then there is some who are not so wealthy, but still what counts is the altruistic mind. For example, myself, I really have nothing, and I even eat other people's food and have nothing, I own nothing else on my own. But in my mind, I always have this wish to benefit others. And the mind pervades like space. So in that way, through the Dharma, I'm helping sentient beings. So you can train in bodhicitta according to your own, whatever is available to you, your own means. And most important is to cultivate a trust in karma, to contemplate karma. If you really understand karma, then your mind becomes very clear. And whenever you only care about this lifetime, then the mind becomes narrow again, or it becomes like ice. And for this reason, the Buddha has said, do not be attached. So that is very meaningful.
그래서 대회 따라 다 돈이 공주 가서 이 해요래 돈이 있어 망법이 공부요래 돈이 공시 받으라 무스들이 다다 여 동네 여진지 동네지 한거 토라 랩고요래 철림바지 철림바 강의 연구요래는 83바된 hinge지 강나 랩에 맞더라 동네 요나 이 동네지랑 솔랩고요래 변호랑은 마라 제가 쳐보나 들이 마지 나나 들이 마지 동네지 라고 소리들이 sempre 연구요라 어떻게 동네 것을 랩이요래 그 가르치는 랩이요 마지나 나가 아마이 가든 쳐보니 저들이 마지 나타가 동네 무슨 나타 동네에서 마지면 누구바지라고 소리 연구요래 오 똥리도 더 파삼제 몇째를 동네 초코도 초로때를 팽개를 해서 다 공시반하지 삼재가 팽개요래 근데 차상 팽개요 말이 차상 가리든 마다 치여 레가 가사요래 때는 많이 동네 레레 송이오나 레지 자와 다디 돌아오나 때다 팽개요래 빼나 삼재 지금 매나 데이터 보는데 다 무슨 돈이 공부는 되니 사족선 방법 찍고 요래 제고는 빼는 자단 잠벌인 게 동행이 요 초과자들이 줄라 싸우고 땅나 고도 초과자고 가양 초과요 말이 강바 또시 메시지 야데 리상고 요라 주심 초과다가 뭐 초과 가양 뭐 고도는 봤다고 초과자요 세상고 요라 다 말이지 다 때려 공을 가리 롱바 제나 요배 뭐지 이나는 랑 보상 총마 다른 게 니도 삼재진도 로바티는 오나 다 주세요 소화가리도 다 때렸다가 항상 로서리지 다른 거지 거지 조보티도 제 가르치고 들이상로 땅이 줘라 다 되지 파 삼재 요베티 동네들 다 싸움 땅 거리들이 시합되는 야 그들 삼재는 뭐 증미나 저 소화가야매 봤지 뭐 그래 당연히 진짜 로바티 밑에 담아주 파마 마지바 니들 마지바 매와 디타와티 하고나 오 우리 지주도 공디오나 로바 강에서나 라상지 샘 동이 초와티 초초 레고 그래 디가니 오 무스 멋세와지는 바들 팔레브나 고주동에 그 소라 이것도 가스 데데 고추 그거래지 고도나 팽이 그거래지 대니 볼사 카리 당소 무보던 세마를 집에 다당 인당 대화도 동의지 초와하고 되라 되니 먹기진 게 사진 게 대니 볼때 망도가 할 거리 땅 아버지 와서 요 코스 동의지 대인들이 담고 팽기고 말이 소소라는 되니 셈나 쿠본도 소주 셈나 동의가 초war랬나 마디와 요리 삐기는 거리 다 살아서 왔다고 그랬지 라 담지 가르도 변에 집이 로만 코 타마미 반디 장미 바로 초사네 심빈도 힘기 침보차 이제 만남 카다냐 무슨 비상 제사한테 세미 바제 들이 상대 오다 집이 로만 쏘아되고 도 근데 집이 로만 공부도 선 다 집이 로만데 라 담지 무슨 속도 통하면 고수 삼세대 요리 그거 남았다고 돼 담지 찍어야네. 로그 자총 따버지. 삼지가 남지디. 용기로리. 배는 가서 따오는 배는 시선을 매지 세우고 주라. 제와 당화 가는 제 로요라. 다 제와 삼지 खु주나. 다 네와 진로 지나와 잘 네와 진로 요리. 세상 거기는 야마 로지. 샘지 주인들이 요를 사 삼지 두규라. 감이선 초사들 상hin제 쌓아요리. 사지지 또 요리. 라직을 하탐지게 주슴지 사지에 삼지 속도 요리서 하고는 그 제라지니 다그 삼부 톱스 다그 이양다고 생기던데 핑고선 로도 대 제대로 대기지 뭐 톱스 사지 탐지게 이제 톱대 네 이제와 창을 대제와 차라 들이 취지 이제 톱되는 동해 용퀸이라 랑이가 동당구 대방문이 세고 이제적이만 딱고도 원하들로나 하고 있다고래 대회를 들이 무슨들이 팽이 요래 가서 대회들이 동이 제법감이 당보동에 웃어 셀렸나 뜻이로 라곰 우리 대기 제보요래 들을 합다하고 따고 죽기 제보요래 대도지 동인이 있어다 동이 찍고 싸면 되는 양 소소 팔라 핀바 대세 요네 양 소소를 받치 뭐 요래 동이 감이 들이 싸는 거랬지.
So also, I'm supposed to talk about the practice of Donglen a bit more, of giving and taking, the practice of giving and taking. And so many people practice the practice of Donglen. And so how does it actually occur that we take on somebody's suffering and give them our happiness? So we bring to mind another being that suffers, and then that suffering comes to your own mind. So you're taking on, what you're taking on is the suffering of this other being. And how it comes to you, how you're taking it on is through first having love and compassion for them. When you think about anybody that you love very much, and then that person suffers, and you think about their suffering, then that suffering, because you care about them, will naturally come to your mind. For example, you love your mother, and then your mother falls very ill. Then that suffering comes to your own mind because you worry about your mother. And why? Because you love your mother. So the suffering of your mother actually comes to your own mind. You remember the kindness of your mother, and you don't want to see her suffering. So that suffering creates an unbearable feeling in your own mind. It comes to your own mind. And so this is what you take. And then what you give is love and compassion to others. So first you feel their suffering. You become aware of their suffering. And by giving them love and compassion, you're actually benefiting them. And of course, you cannot eliminate all of their suffering by practicing being loving towards them. And that is also because you and the mother, for example, have separate karma accumulated, and the mother's suffering is due to the karma that the mother has accumulated. And the root of that is self-grasping. So therefore you cannot take it all from her, but if you love, then surely you can bring it at least some benefit. So in order to really cultivate Donglen, to really practice Donglen, actually it is necessary to give rise to great Bodhichitta. And that means to become completely aware and to care. So for example, how we normally feel. So normally when somebody hears about what's going on in the world, we hear about all the suffering in the world, the wars and so on. How do we react to that? What do we feel? Nothing special actually. We're not very affected by it. We just see how some people have been killed and some houses demolished, and we think, oh, there's war again, people are fighting in this country over there, but it doesn't really greatly affect us. It doesn't make us feel in any certain way. So then you should consider, so then how would you feel if anybody that you love was in that country, in that situation? Your child or your wife, your husband, your family, your friends, anybody that you love. How would you feel if they would be in such a place and suffer? So then, of course, there would be an incredible feeling and suffering that on your part. Because you worry about your loving friend. That is my friend, and if my friend has such suffering, of course I worry about my friend, because I love that friend. So that suffering comes to you. So when you become aware of the suffering of others, wisdom increases. When we are unaware of the suffering of others, when we feel no compassion for them, no love, no compassion, this not feeling anything, this being unaffected, that is the view of ignorance, of delusion. And so then that delusion is present because we're not directly affected. So when you become aware of that deluded mind, try to think that actually every single being in that particular country has been my parent in a past life. And then habituate this view, this understanding. And then as you habituate to it, whenever you see or hear of suffering or any kind of difficulty, immediately that feeling will come to you, it will affect you. Just like there's a person that you love very much in this place. So the feeling must actually come to your mind. And so when the feeling actually arises in your mind, when you feel love, when you care about this, then the practice of Tonglen really has become meaningful or beneficial. And so it is that the compassion is actually twofold. There is the conceptual, the defiled or the objectified compassion, and so that is when we still perceive a concrete, substantial reality. We perceive the reality of self and others, real feelings of happiness and suffering. So when we then see the suffering of others and we perceive them as others, then that kind of compassion is such an objectified or a concept-bound compassion. So then when you feel compassion for these beings, you think about them, it makes you feel very uncomfortable. It makes you feel unhappy and you want to help them, but you feel that there's really nothing that you can do to help them, to benefit them. So then what can you do in that case? How can you then actually help them? So in that case, then you should rely on the deity, supplicate to the deity, because the deity has the power to benefit others. And a deity, for example, like Tara. Tara in the past has accumulated merit throughout countless aeons and has developed great compassion for all mother sentient beings. And as a result of that great compassion, she has actually attained enlightenment. As a result of the four immeasurables, she has attained enlightenment. So an antidote to feeling helpless in helping others is to practice Tara, to supplicate to Tara. And even if you cannot see, even though we cannot directly see the form of the deity, the love of the deity is always present. The actual nature of the deity is the Dharmakaya nature, which pervades like space, and there all the deities are the same. And then the deity manifests in the form of the Sambhogakaya, like a rainbow, out of love and compassion for beings. And so when we die, then whatever there is within the mind, love or hatred, will go with together, continue on with the mind. So if you have love to bring with you, then it will manifest as the Pure Land. The Pure Land, like Devachen, will become manifest before you. And if you bring hatred and anger with you, then hell will become manifest. So the deity has accumulated merit throughout 3 countless aeons, and what the deity has accumulated in that time is actually love and compassion. And through that, the deity has become very powerful. And actually all the deities are one. All the Buddhas of the 3 times have the same power. So there is first the power of your own intention, and that is the intention of sincere intention of benefiting sentient beings. And second, there is the power of the Tathagatas, the Buddhas. That is the great compassion of all the Buddhas. So through your aspiration, you connect to this great compassion of all Buddhas. And then thirdly, there is the power of Dharma Dhatu. And here, within the Dharma Dhatu, the sentient being who suffers and I, who want to alleviate that suffering, are actually one. The basis of our mind is one. When you read the Samantabhadra prayer, you will understand this. And so on the basis of that, you can understand how you can actually bring benefit to sentient beings. And so this is how we practice Donglen. First, we take on the suffering. We bring the suffering to mind. We feel the suffering. And then we meditate on the deity. We supplicate the deity. Or also, ideally, you would place your mind within a state of meditation, resting in the view, the nature of the mind. That is also very meaningful. But however, if you bring the suffering to mind and then you only dwell on the suffering, you keep thinking about the suffering of beings, then it will bring little benefit to others and will perhaps cause some harm to yourself. So this is how we should practice Donglen. It is to take on the suffering and then not dwell on the suffering, but rather practice the deity, meditate on the deity.
그래서 동해가 싸와 유모 발이 우리 동해가 싸와지 되게 유모 밖에 가라 이 돈이 좀 하장 가르쳐 보여요 되게 소소라 팽이 소소는 제가 유모 봐도 기도 대 너무 세나요 뒤쪽 통하고 요리데 강리 맨 유모 밖에 따와서 지나 비감이 이야세 나 제당한 것도 왔어 제당은 강리는 감성 생기 제당도 뭐 제당 어떻게 봐라 제당 지와도 지와리 그래서 또 그렇게 제당은 매직의 제당은 좀ပဲ예다라서 봐 이 직디바사지 당들이 그 제당 차도 동해 요리 유무바 요리 동해 요리 대회 다다 저와는 뭐지 직디바사 마틴 송아티 송고요리 저거 직장이 고토라 대외 감성 심지긴 유무방은 유무고 쪽발해서 네 유무고 세당대 탁탁 탑소는 감성 심지긴 거는 양도로 오고 대사로도 등이 빠졌대 라게 세당도 차도라 뭐고째 탑고 요리 소소 세당 지레 적사나 대그 펜션이 안 넣고 요리 대낭이지 세당고 망도로 오고 요리 체를 오고리 유무가 가서 끼나 돼서 체를 오고 요리 태비 삼지 등에 떠안져 있었나 유무가 끼어가니 세당 차도 맞지 에데라도가 독시 세당 차도 유무가 적거든요 세나 세당 차도 내 삼지 말이 막 거는들이 세당 차도 이제 하정들이 니가 접어서 어떻게 가는 사촉생비 가다입니다 삼지가 가발이고 삼지 돈으로 요래 대회들이 유모바를 강제명甚至삼체의 유모바를 쪽바이 먹는지는 뒷감이더니 다진 가는 거 랍 나와근들 전 니지근들 타는 이쪽으로 싸움들이 기들 놓토바지 덕수섬들이 소장하섬 남자를 봤으면 되는 거고요 소탈게 유모반 레버린 적네 딴 유모바 깎아요 상승이 상승지지네 전도요래 야 상하가 따와라더니 유모가 ramhime ba hako요래 저 따wan 공투서 따와서 면로 차대요래 다 동당사죠 성공투나 유모가 덤지 나또 버신다고 차로요래 내려서는 유모가 도지 다 감수 신고는 양송삼대는 유모가 양 돈이 됐다고 공부했지
So the actual root of suffering are the afflictions, and there's also a way to practice Donglen at the time when afflictions arise, and this actually has also benefited me greatly. So when an affliction arises, you can recognize the affliction, but then the letting go, the giving away part becomes more difficult. So for example, when anger arises, you recognize first that I'm angry, anger has arisen. And then you should recognize that the anger of all the sentient beings in the three realms, my own anger, are the single one, have the same nature. There's actually only one such a thing called anger or hatred. It all has the same nature. So that goes for anyone's anger, whether it is the anger of a poisonous snake or the anger of a person or the anger of a hungry spirit without a body or the anger of a worldly god. The worldly gods actually also have all the afflictions like anger and jealousy, and therefore they also suffer. And this is actually the reason why His Holiness the Dalai Lama advises us not to follow a worldly god, because they are just the same as us. They also suffer. So the afflictions of all sentient beings in the three realms and my own afflictions are a single one. So if you recognize that and you're able to let go of your affliction, this one affliction that has arisen, then you can think that now this has made the affliction of all the sentient beings in the three realms somewhat lighter. So when you give up the affliction, it affects all sentient beings too. And if you understand that, then you will be able to overcome your afflictions of hatred, anger, jealousy, and so on. So you understand that when you, self and others, are related, and so therefore when you give rise to anger, every time you keep thinking about anger, you keep fostering these angry thoughts, anger just increases. And therefore also it increases, it pervades sentient beings. And so recognize it in the same way with all the other afflictions, but especially of all the 6 afflictions, hatred, jealousy, pride, greed. And especially in the secret mantra, in the Vajrayana system, it is taught that hatred and jealousy in particular are very dangerous afflictions. And that is because they destroy our bodhicitta, love and compassion. So whenever any of the affliction arises, recognize that affliction to be the same as all the afflictions of all sentient beings. So no matter what condition you encounter that triggers the affliction, ideally you would tame it by resting in the nature of the mind, the view, or middling, you would overcome it through compassion, or at least you would remember its faults and therefore avoid it. And from this actually, the 3 levels of the path have appeared, have come into existence. First, the pratimoksha path of individual liberation. There we avoid the affliction, fearing their result. Then in the bodhisattva path, we transform the affliction through love and compassion. And in the Vajrayana path, we realize through the view, we realize that afflictive emotions lack any true existence. So this view is like fire. And when one recognizes the ultimate bodhicitta, then one perceives all the afflictions and thoughts like wood that are turned into fire through the view. So the view destroys the affliction. And so every time, through whichever means you are able to eliminate an affliction, you can think that this has made the afflictions of all sentient beings in the 3 realms lesser or somewhat lighter. And so this is how you can practice Donglen when afflictions arise.
Then give us him young, go to a teba, Lama, Mugu, Pama, Ninji, there are 2 barang, Chowayo, but Jevakan, oh, dear, our simply Tamchi, you the Jevasu, Sami, Raga told the Achimbo, oh, me told the Achimbo. Then Nagi Tamago to Bortio, but something is the Hona, Hona, it is him to tap the 랑 가와다 대화 중에 톱나 되는 앞에 집어도 야 가라이서 모두 톱나 어디서 잠에 도발 소소 대답하는 데리다 다다 사족서 조종 모남나 대답 송을 심지 담지 동이 남아나서 대답 문제 도로로 동이 가리로 머리 동이 가리로 대담지 리볼을 보나지 돈이 감 조종 모나지 돈이 하장 피보요리 대회들이 가사가 네 조종 모나절 사족선 양이 결이 조종돼 특당 동적 되게 로는 티핀 받쳐 보요리 갑자기 동이 참아送요리 베르타도 담블링 파트너 로나 남들 relati라서 뭐 니가 좀 어떻게 돈 동이 가게 가리도 오 대답을 탐지를 돼 대답은 영어양 말하면 자꾸 요리 대답 이제 또 전부 잡을 끼지다 로버 끼지 노트북 요리 배나 진짜 동에서 이제 노트북부터 요리 제 강의 중앙에 되나 다다 이제 이 매연이 잠도다 상담 때라서 왕다 답석 너무 휴네 생각하리도 오 당에 너무 때로 쉬자지 하여튼 가르송 샤바지 요리 샤바지 자리지 샤바그 뉴모바 싸우는 자상 다 맡았나 지하서마지도 해야 용구요래 용나 되는 요바지 샤바지 바 디스토브르티네 누게질 좁아 탑 용구요래 오 베르페샤면서 로바자진저라 나나 미비체야라 들어 로바진이 누게질 가 탑용한테 가네 뉴모바 먹기와라 샤바지 바 탑게 이 동에 체가 용나 체가 따로 따오는 자창 따로 요래 옛날 다른 게 요바탐질이 잡았잖아 동해질 좁아 탑 연구 요래지 잡았다는 말이 가지고 노바전이가 말이지 띵냠나지 니바체 왕세이 뭐 노바전이 말이라니 요래지 그냥 레 거기 그거는 냠제지 니바체 버려서 하고 요래지 냠레 마톱 니바체데 따오는 노바 마주바체 니바 니바 쳔보레지 가래지 내 가야 쉬어 말이지 내 강제제 저거리서 가족 마종 제바지 셔과지 그 말봐 셔과 마지는 진짜 레지 좀 이제 특정 민용고요래 대회는 저니 다다 동해 가는 모아서 그 팽이요래 대 똑같으니 잡는 진짜 나빠 사집에 주로 모람 땀나 디 모람도 똑되게 다 가사까지 동해 잠을 좁다봐 미망보 철랑을 속으로 같이 알리 두고 요래 같이 좁고 요래 비슷이 따왔더니 저 차진 차와들들이 싸우었던 어디 저 세리스 다른 사용자 미망보 샤서 어디 메시 셔비 녹스야스 디저 그래서 어디 저 가리 지양 아마 그 먹기가 넘나 들 샤과지 코트를 쏘 탈바 들이서는 레좀제 먹대 세서들 참아지 다 좀레슨 로요래 들이 하고 들이 치치치치로 들이 사족sem을 세워세워 치로 요래 대회를 들이 돈이 줘도 겁나 이나 핀바다 들이 랑랑들이 사족sem 랍상이야 지로 또 봤더니 공기 배워 대라서 봐서 하자 핀바치 보요래 내가 이제 또 카페 나 소리 기는 대화 초조 홍어스 저거 어디 삼지심일 방화지 랑의 동해 오빠가 진짜 동해 랑을 롱송 돈이 됐다 들어서 뭐 동해 오빠가 진짜 생기 동해 철롱지 나 생기 삼지 참인상 넣지 되게 팽이 오래지 라니와 저거 생기 삼지 됐다 왜 잡아 쏘었나 되게 대삼지 쏘는 부절인 저도 오래 대 마실 거 대 나치 보다 나디 체체로 오래 내가 생각도 나엔즈 봐 나 레리티나 이 샘지 레리 똑같다고 그래 저거는 사바리 사바디 똑같아도 저거로 봐 오피테다 그래들이 돈이 이제 생고 주라고나 하장 펜버 쳔보 요래스
And so then also when virtuous thought arises, you can practice Donglen. For example, when you feel devotion to faith to the three jewels and devotion to the guru, compassion to your parents and so on, when that feeling arises, then you can think, may all sentient beings give rise to that love, or that compassion. For example, if you have great love for a friend, and then you think, I really love this friend, and may all beings love each other just like I love my friend. So with that state of mind will pervade all beings, because mind is all pervasive. So you can practice in that way even when you encounter just the slightest happiness. For example, when you feel happy today, or you eat some good food today, then you can think, may all beings obtain that food, may they all be so happy. And this is also explained in the Vajradhara prayer. It's where it says that it explains how we can recognize the various forms of suffering of sentient beings. It explains the suffering of the animals and the humans and so forth, and then an antidote to each of them. And also it therefore tells the benefits of Donglen. So because of its great benefits, this text has been translated into various languages in the world. And these words of Bodhichitta, the meaning of these words actually need to be applied and put into practice. So therefore it is very beneficial to memorize these words actually, because they really teach and explain how we need to practice when we encounter suffering. For example, in this world, although there is a lot of suffering, there are accidents in the plane or in the train and so forth, and many difficulties. And when you see these difficulties in this world, then there are actually two different forms of suffering. There's a way of understanding these kind of difficulties, and two forms of suffering that we have two forms of difficulty that beings encounter that help us overcome this suffering. So, for example, some people say, or we receive many of the refuge vows. Many of us receive refuge vows, bodhisattva vows, empowerments, samayas, and so on. So some people say that you should receive those empowerments or samayas, and then, for example, if you have taken a vow and you find that you've broken that vow, you recognize, I've broken that vow, so you regret and you confess that breaking of the vow. And if you confess, then even though the entire negativity created by that might not become completely purified, and as a result, therefore, in future lives you might still experience some suffering, but still, because you have regretted and because you have confessed, even though you encounter suffering in the future, there will be a way out. Some kind of rescue will come and protect you. For example, you might suffer from losing your money, your wealth, and then somebody comes and helps you financially. Or you fall ill, and then you receive medical treatment, or somebody who helps you to receive medical treatment, and you're cured. So you will find a way to overcome this suffering, even though it arises. So if you engage in negative action, if afflictions arise and you confess them, then at least half of that can become purified. Best, of course, all can be purified, but at least half can become purified if you regret and confess that. And if you regret and confess, then in the future, although part of it will ripen, there will be a way out. Some method will come along. On the other hand, if you have never confessed, how does it look like then? For example, there are some people who say you shouldn't take any vows because if you break those vows, it is very harmful. Therefore, you shouldn't receive these empowerments and the samayas and so on. And of course, they have a point because they're thinking about the harm in breaking a vow, which is true. But actually, it is said, still it is better to receive a vow and break it than never having received a vow at all. That is still better. And the reason is because if you have never received a vow, you feel free to do whatever you wish. You feel, I have no vow, I can do whatever I want. And then, of course, you do as you please and you never confess. And then in the future, it will fully ripen. The karma will fully ripen. And then nothing can help you at that time. So it is very beneficial, therefore, to regret and to confess. And also, whatever suffering we encounter, to dedicate for the purpose of others. And so, when we, for example, this is also how we then help others. When we make prayers for the beings who suffer in this world, then there are beings still who benefit from that. For example, some find rescue. For instance, people are drowning, falling in the water, and some of them are pulled out and are rescued. So think very carefully about cause and effect. Or for example, there's an earthquake and one person doesn't die. So there is a very specific cause for all of that. And in this context, it is because in a past life they have done something wrong, but they have confessed that. And therefore now, even though they are in the earthquake or so, their life will be liberated. They will be rescued. So everything follows this principle of karma, cause and effect. If you understand that, your trust will increase, your bodhicitta, your love will develop and increase. So if you cultivate Donglen, practice Donglen in this way, in these previous ways, then you will truly bring benefit to others. Your own bodhicitta will increase, and it will be of great benefit to yourself and others. Jetsong Khapa really summarized the root of Donglen, and he said, if you're happy, you should dedicate it to all sentient beings, and if you suffer, you should take on the suffering of all beings. So, for example, if you suffer, you can think, may this suffering represent the suffering of all beings. I take it all on. And that will benefit beings and also yourself. And if you feel happy, think, may this happiness pervade all beings. And in that way, it becomes a great cause of merit. And so if you do not understand it in that way, and you only practice it for your own purpose, actually, then only the self-grasping will increase. It only will be, if you only care about, if you experience happiness and you think this is my happiness and you indulge in it, every time a thought of I or mine arises, self-grasping increases. It becomes stronger and stronger and obscures the mind. It's just like every single drop of dirt that you pour into the water will defile it just a little bit more. So in this way, please understand the benefits of the Donglen practice.
되게 루가 이서 주바 삼주고지 이동마 이름은 제가 이지동에 통화 미술 강의 가려로 대탐지 통구요 딱 봐야지 이도로 센데요래 이지동에 통화도 싫어버티네 tertine soso sawa jachen ro tini ngone chuma mai ba de chimi sa chok sen ro te kere.
So before actual bodhicitta or altruistic mind has arisen, before it really has arisen in our mind, we first understand that love and compassion are for our own greatest benefit. It really benefits ourselves. So therefore we make an effort to cultivate it. So that is a fabricated cultivation of love and compassion. So it is a fabricated compassion. And then, however, if you habituate to that and you always do that, if you always bring love and compassion to mind throughout the 6 times of day and night, all the time, then eventually true compassion will arise in the mind, and then it will be present just naturally. Just naturally, you will always be concerned about others. You will never think about your own benefit and will just think about what other people need. How can I help others? What do they need? What can I do to make them happy? And so on. So wherever you go and whatever friend or family you associate with, you will only care about them. And so someone who holds such bodhicitta, such love and compassion, whatever they do with body, speech and mind will be pleasing to others. Their conduct will become non-violent towards others in any way, in every way. And so those, someone like that, when they see others suffer, they become aware of others' suffering. They become aware of their difficulties. They care for other people's suffering. It comes actually to their mind because they only think about others. And that increases their wisdom. So their mind becomes more and more vast, so wisdom increases. And then finally it becomes the unfabricated bodhicitta. So that is what ultimately arises.
산지의 용지 삼체 산적고 세는 보치는 용화에서 대리 높은 산지지 민세는 총소 그래서 산지의 용지 삼지면 잡아 망도로다 용지 이게 요 강래지나 그 좁아 발도서 맞죠 어떤 산적 저도 턱기니 그러니까 봐 잠이서는 좁아 발도서 맞죠 개발해서 이 발도서 맞죠 제일이 산지의 용지 삼체 내가 다tuk 니 대화 삼지들이 제일 top 다tuk 사지에 공방했더니 나도 죽을 자사 톱니 이노 조건이게 선지 동지에서 받아요. 바로도 바쪽으로 도발해서 이 바로도 바쪽다 가요리 되나 삼대 랑그 유디나 라우라고 저래 바로도 바쪽 랑 이게 차요 요래 별나 코르네니나 마치를 보고주나 보세나 라고 삼대 제보요래 데라 토마니 코가 좀 가리 나가 보지 랑가 보지 마도 이 랑가 마사 보이 제와이와 하고 랑가 보고 데라더니 삼대 제보요래 데라 삼대 제보요 베티도나 로송가리 동거나 세나요 말이지 세나메가 디마고 올라스 그리고 누바 당도요 말이지 누버서 빵에 비버서 놓고 요래지 저 중간하게 제일진이 강이 넘바다도 가래서나요 저기 주바 요래지 빼는 것도 칼라사나야 칼라칼한 거를 쓰고 요래 랑그 보지거더니 마땅한 탐지 랑그 락와게 파서마서 쓰고 요래 대답들이 주바양 대답이 요래지 바츠는 좀 봤는데 내가 갑자기 돌리게 되어가지고 그래서 드리들 줄이더라고 제가 오다 나는 뒤에 내가 저기 요래 레카치 와서 다른 그 리라 망보라 타보 소달았다 되는 강반요 되는 모자요 다 자주 망보잖아 버티게 돈다라더니 상속당을 요래 다 배서 세대 담지 뚫주지 배서 강에 먹자 두고 요래 들이 쌈띠 시바 강을 딱 버들이 고스러서 상하고 버티 대신이 요래 저 쌈띠 되게 이 두고 요 말이 저 쌈띠가 남지 차대요 들이 싫어고 남지 매회 더만이 가야도 봐서 나지 있어도 봐들이 딱 골와지 니디는 고와지 탈토관 니디를 나지 있어야 되면은 나가버스 나디를 따뜻을 발시 쪽 창나양 들때 좀 살쪽은 저런 거를 또 가진 저로 그러더니 코베니 용띠 삼지 쪽은 저로지 코가 좀 세래 용띠 쪽을 가진 저로 그래 야 따보들이 지도냐 뭐지 제 야찰 들을 호종이 뭐 맞지 들이 파면 가만히 딱 코로라고 그래 네 보고도 가 마음과는 신나게 들어 다디지 나고 자고서 다고 가면 이 세상 나게 그래 그게 와서마다 장 타고 왔더니 나고 파마도 이라도 또 다리 뛰어왔다 요거 세상을 주로 그래 대는 산적서고 용띠 싫어 똥탐시 용띠는 저도 그랬어 강의들 삼띠지 다치고 뭐 하고네 대전에 생게 만나거든요 무슨 게 살아요 와서 라고 파마 라고 범합지 뭐 직접 매스 보신 손 벌이 제요랬어 대는 참아다 보자도 거는 하나 빼셔요 말이지 얘는 랑보다 개발비 생구들이 삼세 오잖아 랑보다 보자 참아 파시는 알아 랑보 타는다 보자 뒤 수능부 토대 삼지 삼지 오열에 코를 사와세나 코를 내줘 내와는 통 사족의 샘노 천난데 백계롱송 명탐지는 초에서 사접은 노래 사제 좀 내게 손발에 대답에서 사족성 위원이 대답을 사족성 메나 파시 쪽 이봐 강세 제나 이 동네 정도 요래 대답 다 탑라 기바게 그 탑다가 다 때마에 무슨 잡기도 막 걸어 탑이 넣었지 섬기 섬지 상자가 탑이 넣었지 강리 저 사축선 삼hin지 죽을 때나 대 호와 그 찬지 대 사축선을 줘야 코를 사와서 사축선을 줘야서 이 사축선을 빼라 자 세르드 줘야서 빼세리 코를 좋은 섬지 용기 좋다고요 소랑 구절이 좋다고요 그랬지 마실래 좀 용기 섬지 좋은 정도 그래 사축선이면 용기 섬지 좋은 정도 그래 사축선이 싫어 좋은 섬지 용기 정도 그래 농대.
And so all them qualities of the Buddhas arise from Bodhichitta. Therefore it is said the perfect Buddhas arise from the altruistic mind. So even though the qualities of a Buddha are so many and inconceivable, the Buddhas have all attained enlightenment because first they have given rise to Bodhicitta, and then throughout 3 countless aeons they have practiced the 6 paramitas with the mind of Bodhicitta. And as a result they have acquired all the enlightened qualities, the temporary and also ultimate happiness, the ultimate enlightenment. Ultimately then they have attained the seat of the Dharmakaya for their own purpose, and for the purpose of others they manifest the 2 Rupakayas, the form emanations, in order to benefit sentient beings. So they have attained these qualities by practicing the 6 paramitas. But what really is the nature of the 6 paramitas? all the 6 paramitas are a quality of love and compassion. They are the reflection of love and compassion. So when there is love, then naturally there will be the 6 paramitas. Even in a worldly sense, for example, a mother has a child and she loves her child very much. And so the only fault, samsaric fault that comes in here is that she grasps at the child as my child. This is my child. And so then she doesn't really consider all the other sentient beings and doesn't understand the connection of all the other children or sentient beings, and only loves her own child. But because she loves her child, she will not hold back, and she will give freely, and will give all her wealth freely. And that really is the nature of generosity. And then, because she loves the child, she doesn't want to harm the child, and she wants to help and benefit the child. And that is naturally the paramita of moral conduct. And because she loves the child, she will endure any kind of hardships, so she will be patient. For example, when the child is eating, doesn't know how to eat, and the food goes all over out of the mouth, then she will just wipe it off with her own hand without thinking it's dirty or so, because it's her child. And that is patience. And as a result of generosity, moral conduct, and patience, one obtains the happiness of the higher realms, the temporary happiness of the higher realms. And then also she practices diligence, because day and night, entire life, she works very hard for her own child, worrying about the child's future. First, the child has to go to school, and then later it has to buy a house, and it needs a car, and so on. There are many plans that parents have for their children. So they work very hard and endure any effort, any hardship for their own children. So that really is the paramita of diligence. And then also she practices the paramita of meditation, because she never forgets about the child. When the child leaves and goes outside, she still always thinks about her child. So that is naturally meditation. And then there's the paramita of wisdom. And so in a samsaric sense, that is turned into self-grasping. Because we perceive a duality of self and others in samsara, a mother would think of her child, this is my child. And even though she has practiced all the other of the 6 paramitas, in the end it still becomes a fault, because wisdom actually is lacking, and instead there is self-grasping. And that is the fault of samsara. In samsara, we transform actually all the good qualities into faults. So how do we do that? For example, a parent who cares for their child, they care for their children, they raise them, then they grow up, and they want them to go study. And then if the children do not behave that way, they don't want to study, they don't listen, then the parents get angry at their children. And they think, I've raised this child, so in the future I have somebody when I'm old and help me die. And I've cared for this child, and now he doesn't listen to me. And so then they get very angry at their children. And when that happens, then all that love becomes anger, and in future lives, that child will be one's ultimate enemy. Somebody who understands the qualities of bodhicitta actually can transform all the faults into good qualities, because one understands the preciousness of love and compassion. And so a mother, for example, who understands that would think that even though that is my child, actually all sentient beings have been my children in a past life. So whenever she sees another little child, she would think, this also was my child. And of course, I don't have enough money to care for all the children in the world, but in the mind there is no difference. In the mind she shares the same love for all beings, like for her own child. And of course, she needs to take care of this child in a mundane sense. But even though she cares for this child, knowing that all beings have been her children in the past, it is just like she was caring for all the children at the same time. So that is the nature of love and compassion. It turns into wisdom, and then there's the perfection of wisdom. So in that way, even though one still lives in this world, in samsara, lives a samsaric life, one can create happiness. The Buddha had therefore taught in the Dashabhumi Sutra that such a person is a true bhikshu, like a fully ordained monk, as a householder who is a true bhikshu. And that is someone who understands the qualities of bodhicitta. So if that quality of bodhicitta is lacking, then even though one practices any of the other paramitas, it will become faulty. The good quality will turn into a fault. So the skillful means as practitioners is to turn the faults into good qualities. When we take the refuge vow, one line says, Tap Yino, which means this is the method. It is a method for sentient beings to attain enlightenment. And so if they only cultivate love and compassion, bodhicitta, then their samsaric activities, their ordinary grasping at samsara, will transform into bodhicitta. It is just like transforming iron into gold, a metal into gold. So samsara, and then one is able to transform. That is just like transforming the samsaric faults into good qualities. That is if one understands the qualities of bodhicitta. And if one doesn't understand it, then one will transform all the qualities into faults. So knowing bodhicitta, no matter what you do, will transform everything into a good quality.
Jibala soba parsi korchina o ta so tanga giwa du jiba toya kaya mezi joba meri me yore e mare o jibati kang ni bori na jibati senni bo so marari bak senni bo joba da shenko mara ira da men joba shenko mara jibata senni bo na tata soso de 인기 미지 따라도 요나야다 간로 도나 파티 그거를 참을 세나 누구요 세나 강디 요나 되지 마이 삼잖아 그러면 이제 말은 누구요래 지수 고소라 개상으로 지소지 되지 마이 삼 세나 매봐 저 기치 보래 아랑게 파동 그바 탐지 이제 마이 삼 예서부터 이제면 되면 누구요래 대에서 탈락해봐더니 줘봐 대답을 산조선배 줘봐 너는 이비를 어디 셈니 말하나 셈지 탐지를 피고 삼니 셈지 삼주 파마이 서로 로를 말하더니 조람 탐지 파치 조건나 로요래지 대기들이 다다다 산조선배 조종네 실제로 나더니 평치 모래지 산이 건다 끝에서 무슨 하나 오래지 도다 사초 셈지 공감무나 도다 사초 셈지 동족 우리가 치모여 뭐람도 저도 하자 같이 버리 뭐라도 지금 다 참만 있는 속으로 오래
When you want to practice any of the paramitas, for example generosity, you also need to understand its essence. For example, if you want to practice generosity, you might think that I really want to give, I want to be generous, but I have nothing to give, so how can I be generous? So here it is important to understand what is generosity the antidote for? Why do we practice generosity? As Milarepa had said, it is the antidote to stinginess or greed. And when we direct our generosity towards the higher fields, it becomes an offering. For example, one of the 7 limbs, or to the lower fields of sentient beings, then we practice generosity. But any kind of giving away must become an antidote to greed or stinginess. And that can refer to anything that you are giving away, you're letting go of. Whenever you let go of anything without holding back, then it becomes generosity. Then it becomes an antidote to greed. So think about generosity in this way. That is the essence of generosity. And then when you think in this way, now I'm giving away whatever it might be, that is my act of generosity, it will really become generosity. It will have the same results. So it will be of great benefit to you. So it is important to freely give away without a sense of holding back or stinginess. And that in itself is generosity naturally, that state of mind. So think that every time you're giving away something, think that this is my generosity, I freely give it. And then it will also have the same result as generosity. So that is a skillful way of practicing generosity, for example, or any of the bodhisattva activities. And so in brief, you should never separate from the altruistic mind, the wish to benefit sentient beings, to see them all as your parents. And when you have that state of mind, then whatever you do will become the 6 parameters just naturally. So this evening we will read the Shantideva, the Bodhicharya dedication prayer, which is very beneficial, and it is actually related closely to the relative Bodhicitta. And tomorrow, since we will be talking about the ultimate Bodhicitta, in the dedication we will recite the Samantabhadra prayer. So it is very important to continuously always, normally always recite these prayers, and to really internalize the meaning of those words in those prayers, because everything really that we have mentioned is included within this prayer.